What is going on, peacemakers, and welcome back to another video. So today's video, I want to talk to you guys about honoring God, because at the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to for this specific way in which we could honor God. And it's a great opportunity to not just honor him, but to share or flex those muscles of the characteristics in which we as Christians, as Christ followers, are supposed to portray. We're supposed to portray characteristics of Christ-like. And when we have the opportunity to flex those muscles and to do more in the just great works, the easier it becomes. Just like any muscle that you exercise, the more you do it, the easier it'll get, and the more you will be able to accomplish, or the heavier weights you would be able to lift, meaning, in this application, that you very well could grow to the point in which the hard stuff doesn't really seem that hard. So let's jump into it. I'm talking about specifically tithing. Now, I don't really care about the conspiracy theories or myths, or maybe even some truths that are behind the whole idea of tithing. A lot of people like to talk about some unfortunate churches that do not always have the community or the churchgoers' best interest at heart. And that really stinks. But that's also the reason why you should be very selective or very cautious about the church that you go to. Nobody, I think it's pretty well known, nobody really trusts TV preachers. There's not a whole lot of people that have a whole lot of trust for individuals, obviously, that you don't meet. But there's a lot of questions as to why certain individuals and certain churches and certain preachers need some of the, certain materials, such as planes and, stuff like, stuff to that effect. I think the question enters everybody's mind. However, my place isn't here to judge. My place is to relay the message of giving with a giving heart and not with a receiving heart. And there's a big difference, and there's a lot of different ways you could look at tithing that are all good forms of honoring God and loving God, and showing the world godly characteristics. Now, unfortunately, the flesh does get the best of us sometimes. The demonic, the ways of the world, they do get the best of us sometimes. And that's not necessarily a fail. That's just not a battle you got to win. That's not just, it's just not a fight that you got to have the upper hand on, which is fine though. You're not perfect. You're not gonna have a whole lot of moments in your life that you're gonna have the upper hand on. What the most important part is how you get back up from those. I kid you not. That is really ultimately what your characteristic, or what God is looking at, is how do you get back up. It's one thing to take a hit. It's another to get back up from the hit. So what are you going to do, right? How are you going to react? The next, really ultimately, the thing that tithing has to do the most with is, for our finances, right? And it's a good rule of thumb to give 10%. However, I like to say that that's a good start. Reason why is because most people, who have a giving heart have, this generosity that comes from them. And man, let me tell you too, first of all, it's infectious. Like, one person's generosity can absolutely inspire more generosity. And before you know it, everybody's just giving their shirts off each other's back. And it's a beautiful thing to be in the presence of, because in a world in which we live in today, where it's all about lovers of self and, just the end times, it's really difficult to see godly characteristics. And first of all, we are fools if we think that non-godly characters could portray godly characteristics. I 100% believe that. You're a fool for thinking that a non-godly or ungodly character will have to, or consistently, or regularly portray godly characteristics. Now, I'm not saying that anybody who isn't Christian can't be a good person. It's not what I'm trying to say at all. What I am trying to say is that they will be less inclined to do so. Why? Because, well, they're not, they have no creed to follow. They have no, there is no, there is no God they worship. They are only lovers of self, right? They think that they are their own gods. And if that's the case, they will act like such. And when they act like such, they are only living out a manifestation of what they believe. And if they don't believe in God, selfish, many other characteristics that we talk about in the 7 deadly sins are more likely to manifest in them. It's just the way it is, I would expect someone who calls himself a Christian to follow and act like a Christian. Just the same manner, I would expect a non-Christian to act and speak and show characteristics of non-Christian. It's morals, it's ethics, it's a way of life. And depending on how deeply you feel affected by it, or how deeply you feel changed by it, will determine the outcome in which you will tend to follow. So, tithing. All of this is relevant. I just want to be completely clear with you. Before I make my final points on the matter, I want to talk about the finances of it. 10% is amazing. 10% is better than nothing, first of all. Never strain yourself, right, when you're giving or when you're doing charity, because then ultimately you will be the one that will be in need of receiving charity. And if you want to be in a place of help instead of a place of receiving, I would recommend doing what you can. If you can't do it, don't stress yourself out. Don't overdo it. Reason why I say that is because there's a lot of good people, when they get this idea in them of this generous heart, of this generous mind, of this generous giving characteristic. A lot of people just don't know how to stop or when to stop. That's a really good question. The biggest thing I always do is make sure all the bills are paid, right? Make sure the dog's happy, make sure the cat's happy, make sure that the house the house is in order, make sure the internet, the phone, make sure everything is good. Because if it's not, then you're not in a place to help. You're in a place of where you need to work on yourself. And it's a pretty easy way. I keep a board at home that has all of my bills, everything that everything that I need to worry about, and I even have it down to a science to where I know exactly how much I need for that month. So I've got a quota that I need to meet. And tithing is also up there. And the reason why I put tithing up there is because I need to make it a ritual just as much as I make it a ritual to pay my bills, I also need to tithe. Now, I put 4 squares up there because it's important to do it 4 times. Every time I get paid, right? It's important to, for that paycheck. But here's another thing that I also do is that if I receive other money, for, whatever it is, I'll also tithe that as well. Let's just say, someone give me, $100 for whatever. Well, $10 of that, $10 of that, 10% is going to go to the church. Regardless of how much it is, that 10% is always a good rule of thumb. And when you do tithe, and you are tithing to a good church, a trustworthy church, I like to pray and ask God that please let this money reach the unreachable. Please let this money go to those who are in need of this money. And then I leave it to God. Now, is it still possible that somebody could be in the wrong place at the wrong time and do the wrong thing with that type of money? Sure, absolutely. However, let me tell you what's more likely. It's more likely that when you pay your taxes, that money that you are paying, that is coming out of your account without your say-so, first of all, that the money that is used for tax, could be used for a lot worse than what that tithing could be used for. Most of the time, that tithing goes to things that, could be, considered a little bit more selfish. Like what, like we mentioned earlier, TV preachers or big mega churches. And I'm not trying to pick on mega churches. I just think that, because obviously they have more people, there's a lot more money revenue because there's a lot more, people who give a lot more tithing than your just small white church on the corner, right? So with that being said, what are some other ways we could tithe? Well, probably one of the most important ways, and one of the ways that you could never escape here on earth, is tithing with your time, your effort, ultimately your labor. When it comes down to it, I don't have a tithe for that. The tithing idea is that you're supposed to give 10% at a base level, that's a really good start for it. So that would also imply that you're supposed to give 10% of your time, 10% of your labor. And here's the thing that I don't always agree with tithing is exactly what Christ said, is that when someone has you go a mile, go 2 miles. Now, of course, the context of this is that there were, the Romans were basically making the Jewish descendants, or just the just the people in that era, carry their gear with them. Romans got tired of carrying all their gear, so they made someone else do it. And per that law in that scenario, in that situation, if a Roman soldier came to you and said that you had to, you had to. And Christ said, well, if somebody makes you go a mile, go 2 extra miles. Carry their gear for them that 2 extra miles. It's really hard to be upset or mad at somebody that goes the extra mile. A lot of times they may even stop and ask and be like, why did you do more than what I asked you to do? And you get to have the amazing response of, because God was with me. It's one of my favorite responses out of the story of King David. However, when it comes to tithing, I always do kind of feel obligated to do above and beyond, to go the extra mile. But like we previously said, that would only be feasible if you're capable. If you're not, it's not very feasible, because then you will be end up in the position where you need help. So if we tithe our time, money, and efforts, or labor, however you want to phrase it, we will be pretty conservative with our time, money, and effort. But I want you to be able to just help out where you see fit. I use this as an example because it's the only kind of example I have. There was one time I forgot to do tithing. And I was going through this restaurant, paying for my meal. It was Panda Express or whatever. And it's pretty easy, when you're going through the line, it's pretty simple, and my order usually just comes up to like $10 or $11 because I round up to charity. And then a gentleman behind me just had such an amazing personality about him. I don't know what it was. He was an older guy, just seemed like to be the life of the party, just was a cool dude, and made me laugh or whatever. And I just thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I want to bless this guy because he's blessed me with his presence. So what I did was, as soon as he let me go first, so I went first, and then ended up paying for his meal as well. And I think that could also be looked at as a form of tithing. I think that can also be looked at as a form of of giving, but also blessing. Man, like, just be a blessing. Now, I get what some people's concern is with there. It's like, well, your time is valuable because your time could equal money. It's like, yeah, it could. But that also really seems like a very selfish way to live. That also seems like a pretty ungenuine or unappreciative way to live, because I'm not appreciating the people that couldn't afford my time. When I just say, you know what, this ain't worth my time. I can't be here. I can't do this because, well, quite frankly, you couldn't pay me if you could, or you couldn't afford me. That doesn't seem like something a child of God should ever say. Now, I've been in scenarios where also individuals don't always have enough time for me, which is fine. I don't personally ask for any time. However, if I'm on the other side of that, if somebody is just needing some time with me, dude, I'll be there till 3 a.m. I'll be there till we get tired of each other and we want to go to bed. I will be there till the end. It's hard, believe me. I have stayed up with a lot of individuals that, truth be told, I didn't always want to, but it was always important to me because that's the moments that they reflect on and remember the most. And I'd rather be remembered for something positive, something encouraging, something inspiring, rather than remember for something stupid I said because I was angry or because I was upset with that individual for whatever reason. Or I was making a fool of myself and I didn't really know exactly the scenario or situation I was in. There's a lot of times where we can portray very righteous, very wise attributes and characteristics. However, we're also still human. We're still also capable of making great mistakes, even if, those mistakes seem a little too common. We're not always the best individual that we could be. So with that being said, don't be so hard on yourself all the time. Just try to be the best version of yourself that you possibly could be. And let me tell you something. A good rule of thumb for that is if it's difficult, if it's challenging, if it's hard. A lot of times people will find purpose when they are coming across a challenge. It's why we like video games so much. When there's challengers in the arena, when there's two opposing forces and conflicts and PvP shooters and stuff. One of the most common video games out there. One of the most common style of games out there. And it's usually because we're trying to find somebody who can match our skill level. That's usually because we're trying to find somebody who is capable of giving us the challenge that we want. And it is very interesting when you take a look at life and you start looking at it like a video game, or you start looking at it in a way in which could provoke a lot of progression or challenge that would also level up your skills. And and that's why I think it's important to try different things. Now, I don't like trying different things in the sense of trying different foods, trying stuff like that. I like trying things as in like getting into situations or scenarios that aren't exactly feasible. It doesn't seem like a good idea at first, but being able to direct it in a way in which could ultimately be good. It's all really depending on how you look at it. So depending on how you are able to interact with the world around you. I think that one of the most important things that we as Christians can do is be and share the gospel within ourselves. I heard it beautifully said by a priest on the internet that just went viral. The priest was confronted with a parent that was asking about should their child watch Harry Potter, because there's a lot of witchcraft and sorcery that could be misdirected or misguided there, that could lead down an interesting path for those who are interested in that kind of stuff, or find interest in that kind of stuff. And one of the things that he said was that, well, which one can they recite the most? Can they recite the book of Harry Potter, or can they recite the Bible? And I thought, man, here we go. We got another, Bible thumper. We got somebody who, But what he said was just amazing right after that. He said that if they can filter out, if they know the Bible more, they can filter out the deception, the lies, the ungodly characteristics from the godly characteristics in life. They can see the lies in the movies. They can see because when you're a kid and you start seeing people doing magic and doing all these amazing things and unusual things, they start growing up wanting to be like that. They start growing up with that idea. But when you give them a firm foundation of how the world universe actually works and how everything, when you give them a realistic expectations or understanding of the world, then they can use that filter and be able to decide or to rule out all the rest. It's really brilliant, honestly, the way he put this. And I think that we could do a lot better at understanding that, or a lot better at explaining that to our kids, to people that we're influencing, regardless of what situation you're in or who you're trying to influence. It's a really good way of looking at it. Just like the same way with tithing, man. Just the same way that we can give a part of ourselves. In the same way we can financially support others. This is all relevant. This is all part of it, because at the end of the day, the reason why you're doing it is because you have chosen to not follow the ways of the world, but you have chosen to let Christ run your life. You have let down your own selfish desires, and you have allowed Christ to take over. And when Christ has taken over, the Spirit will overcome the flesh. And I think that's probably one of the ultimate goals that we as Christians aspire towards. We hope for that moment in which it's no longer our will, but it's His will that will be done. And seek His kingdom first, because if you do so, your wants will soon become His wants, and His wants will soon become your wants, and you are both on the same page. And it's always a good day when you and God are on the same page, man. It's always a good day. So that's just one of the many ways that we could honor God, is by tithing, because it is true, when you tithe, God honors His own individuals who honor Him. And I have to think to myself, man, like, because at that point, it's like, what am I giving for, right? Am I giving to charity, or giving to, tithing? Am I giving money to the church, in hopes that God will turn that around and give me back, give me back sevenfold? Because then our relationship is just a tit for tat. It's quid pro quo. It's you do something for me, I do something for you. And that's not a really good relationship. You want to be able to love, appreciate overwhelmingly, not just limitedly. You don't want to have limited love or a limited relationship. You want to have a unlimited relationship and love and appreciation in any relationship. It's not a business exchange. It's a relationship. It's like, the best way I've ever heard it said is, it's easy to move a couch when you have two people going in the same direction. And often in life, you have a goal, and you got to get somewhere with that goal. And it's a lot easier to do it with two people who are also not just two people, but going in the same direction. It's a lot easier that way. So anyways, guys, that's pretty much it. There's many ways in which we could honor God. And they all three have to do with what we just previously talked about. Financially, your time, and your efforts, your labor. These are all three things in which we could absolutely utilize for God. And I know sometimes they come at the most inconvenient times ever, man. I know, believe me, I know. And sometimes it's worth it. And sometimes it feels like it's not. However, I want you to take joy in that moment. I want you to thank God for that moment. Because even in the ones in which doesn't feel worth it, in the moments in which it is just like, man, I got to be honest, that didn't feel great. Sometimes doing the right thing is inconvenient. Sometimes it's not always just sunshine and rainbows. And I want that to resonate with every single one of us, because this is the exact same mannerism that we look at God and we say, you know what, I will honor God when God honors me. And so you start waiting, and you start waiting, and you start waiting, and you start building up an expectation of what that looks like. And most of the time, it's a pretty unrealistic expectation. But nonetheless, this expectation that you now have is now the reason why your relationship is ultimately not theirs, because you're waiting for someone else to make the first move. And let me tell you, first of all, God's always moving. God's always doing something in your life that you probably don't even recognize or understand how he's working in mysterious ways. I'm always excited, man, when I start seeing God move, and I'm just like, all right, how are you going to do this one? This is interesting. Because it's not always obvious to us. To him, it's pretty obvious. But for to me, it's like, man, what's going to be the outcome of this? Like, this, this is interesting. This is different. And it's fun to get excited about that stuff because, well, first of all, what else is, what's the alternative? What else are you just going to be, just like, oh, man, wait on the edge of your seat? Be like, where's this going to go? And first of all, you should be prepared for whatever it's, whatever could occur from it. Something good, something bad, be prepared. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys take care. I hope you guys enjoyed the message. It's not often a way in which tithing is spoke of. Tithing isn't always talked about in this manner in which we as Christ followers should tithe. Not just financially, but in many other ways as well. And don't be greedy. Don't be selfish with your time or your efforts or your labor, because I don't really feel like God's calling us to be greedy. Now, again, don't exploit yourself. Don't do, don't go, more than what you are capable of doing. Don't run yourself ragged, because you will ultimately be the one in need. So do it at a comfortable rate in which, your health, your mental health and your physical health are capable. So thank you guys so much. Take care. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I'll see you in the next one.